Have you ever asked yourself this question? Why am I drawn to this person and I cannot explain why? Your logic is sending signals that something might not be right. The situation does not quite add up. The pattern, if you look at it honestly, resembles patterns you have been in before, patterns that did not end well. But beneath the logical assessment, something else is operating, something that does not consult your reasoning before it acts, a pull that precedes understanding, that does not wait for permission, that moves you toward a particular person with a force that feels less like a choice and more like a gravitational field you simply found yourself inside. It feels sometimes like recognition, like encountering someone you have known before in some form you cannot name, like a familiarity that makes no sense given how recently you met and how little you actually know about them. And the feeling is so specific, so particular, so different from the ordinary experience of meeting someone new, that you find yourself reaching for explanations that ordinary social psychology does not quite provide. Carl Jung spent his life investigating exactly this territory, the specific, powerful, often unconscious forces that govern who we are drawn to, why certain encounters feel charged with significance, and what the intensity of attraction might actually be telling us about ourselves, rather than about the person we are attracted to. His conclusion was not romantic. Exactly, it was more interesting than romantic, and it was considerably more useful because the framework he developed does not just explain the mysterious pull toward certain people, it reveals what that pull is pointing toward, what it is asking for, what it might be trying to teach, if we are willing to ask the question he considered the most important one. Not why am I drawn to this person, but what does this person bring out in me? 5 dimensions of that question. 5 Jungian principles for understanding the hidden psychology of attraction. 1. The unconscious quietly governs your choices. The story most people tell about their own romantic and social choices is a story organized around conscious intention. You meet someone, you assess them. You decide based on your considered evaluation of the relevant factors whether they are worth pursuing. The decision, in this account, is yours, made by you, from your considered values and preferences, in the exercise of your genuine agency. This story is not entirely false. Conscious assessment plays a role. But Jung's framework suggests that by the time conscious assessment enters the picture, a significant amount of the relevant processing has already occurred at a level below conscious awareness, according to principles that the conscious mind did not choose and often does not know. The unconscious response to another person is not slow. It is extraordinarily fast, operating through channels that are older and more immediate than rational evaluation. The energy of the person, their physical presence, the specific quality of how they occupy space, the particular configuration of traits they embody, all of this registers in the unconscious, with remarkable speed and remarkable depth, producing an evaluative response: approach or avoid, interest or indifference, the specific charge of attraction or its absence that arrives in conscious experience already formed. The conscious mind receives this response and characteristically takes credit for it. We experience the attraction as a conclusion we have reached, rather than a signal we have received. We believe we are choosing when we are, in considerable part, responding to processes that were complete before the choosing began. This is not a counsel of determinism. The unconscious response is not destiny. It is the starting point, the initial signal that conscious awareness can then engage with, examine, and choose to follow or question. But engaging with it honestly requires the prior acknowledgement that it is there, that it is operating, and that the person you feel most strongly drawn to is not necessarily the person your conscious values have selected as most appropriate. The pull is real, but the pull is not always right, and distinguishing between the two, between the genuine signal of genuine compatibility and the unconscious compulsion of unfinished psychological business, is among the most important discernments available in the navigation of your own relational life. 2. Archetypes. The familiar faces you have never met. Jung's concept of the archetypes, the universal patterns of experience and character that recur across cultures, across centuries, and across the psychological material of individual human beings, provides one of the most illuminating explanations for a specific quality of attraction that most people have experienced but few have understood. The experience of meeting someone who feels immediately and inexplicably familiar. Not familiar in the sense that you have met them before, you have not, but familiar in a deeper sense, as though they correspond to something in your inner world that has been present long before you encountered them. as though they are not a new person at all, but the appearance, in physical form, of someone you already knew. What you are recognizing, in Jung's framework, is not the individual person. You are recognizing the archetype they embody, the universal pattern of character or role that they, in their particular way, enact. The hero, the sage, the rebel, the caregiver, the trickster. These are not personality types in the ordinary sense. They are deeper organizing patterns that the human psyche tends to organize itself around, that recur in the myths and stories of every culture, and that appear in the real people who move through your life. When you meet someone and feel that immediate, inexplicable recognition, that sense of already knowing them, what is often happening is that this person corresponds with remarkable precision to an archetypal figure that has been living in your own inner world. Perhaps the figure of the powerful protector that you have been carrying as an internal image of what safety looks like. Perhaps the figure of the creative rebel who embodies everything you have not yet permitted yourself to express. Perhaps the figure of the wise guide who seems to carry the clarity about direction that you have been looking for in yourself. The attraction to this person is not primarily about them as an individual. It is about the correspondence, the specific, often uncanny fit between who they appear to be and the internal template you have been carrying. They seem to already understand you because the archetype they embody already has a place prepared for it in your inner world. This recognition is not false, the correspondence is real, but it is importantly incomplete. The archetype is a pattern. The person is a human being, with their own complexity and their own contradictions and their own inevitable divergence from the perfectly fitted template. And the gap between the archetypal figure you recognized and the actual person they are, which always exists and which time and genuine acquaintance always eventually reveal, is one of the most common sources of the specific bewilderment of falling out of love. Understanding this dynamic does not make the initial recognition less real, it makes it more intelligible, and it makes possible the more interesting, more sustainable question. Having been drawn to this person by the archetype they embody, what in you is that archetype pointing toward? What quality in yourself does this person's presence activate, or challenge, or invite you to develop? 3. The past determines today's attractions. The emotional learning of childhood does not simply inform the adult psyche. In significant and often invisible ways, it governs it. The conclusions drawn from early experience about what love feels like, about what relationships consist of, about what can and cannot be expected from intimate connection, do not remain as explicitly held beliefs that can be examined and revised when they prove inaccurate. They sink below the surface of conscious awareness and become the operating system through which all subsequent relational experience is processed, the template against which new people and new connections are evaluated, often below the threshold of any conscious assessment. This is why attraction is so often, on examination, recognizable, not in the sense that you have met this specific person before, but in the sense that the emotional dynamic they produce feels like something you have been in before. The specific quality of tension, of uncertainty, of the need to earn attention that was not freely given. These are not incidental features of an otherwise unfamiliar situation. They are the features that are producing the sense of familiarity, the emotional signature that your nervous system has learned to associate with the experience of genuine connection. If the environment in which you learned what love feels like was characterized by inconsistency, by warmth that arrived unpredictably, by attention that required effort to secure, by the specific anxiety of never quite knowing whether you were enough, then your nervous system will have learned to associate those features with love itself, not because they are what love is, but because they are what love was, in the specific context in which you first learned the word. And when you encounter, as an adult, a person who produces those same features, whose interest seems uncertain, whose attention requires effort, who creates that specific quality of productive anxiety that feels, in the nervous system, like the excitement of something real, the nervous system responds with recognition, with the specific charge of "this is familiar, this is real, this is what I have been looking for." What it is actually recognizing is not the person, it is the pattern, the emotional signature that was associated in the original learning environment with love. And the recognition, however real it feels, is not evidence of genuine compatibility. It is evidence of familiarity, which is a very different thing. Understanding this does not automatically break the pattern. The nervous system does not revise its operating assumptions simply because those assumptions have been intellectually identified as inaccurate. but understanding it changes the nature of the relationship to the pull. Instead of experiencing the intensity of attraction as self-evidently meaningful, as proof that this person is significant, it becomes possible to ask, what is this specific quality of charge telling me about my own history? What pattern from my past is being activated here? Is the familiarity I am feeling evidence of genuine fit, or evidence of a familiar wound? 4. What you see in them is what lives in you. When you are intensely drawn to someone, when you find yourself admiring them with a force that goes beyond ordinary appreciation, when they seem to embody qualities that feel somehow more vivid, more significant, more real in them than those same qualities appear elsewhere, Jung would ask you a question that the intensity of the attraction makes difficult to hear. Are you seeing them, or are you seeing yourself? The concept of projection, one of the most practically important in Jung's entire body of work, describes the process by which the contents of your own psyche are attributed to another person, not consciously, not deliberately, but through the automatic, pre-conscious mechanism by which unacknowledged, inner contents find their way into perception of the outer world. The specific contents that get projected in attraction are often the contents of what Jung called the shadow, the rejected, unacknowledged parts of the self, and the contents of what he called the anima and animus, the inner image of the idealized other that each person carries within them. These contents are real. They are part of the actual psychological makeup of the person doing the projecting, but they are not yet acknowledged as such. They have not been integrated as conscious aspects of the self, and so they are encountered instead in other people, particularly in the people who, for whatever combination of reasons, provide a sufficiently compelling surface for the projection to land on. This is why certain people seem to possess a quality that is almost luminous, a specific vividness, a particular significance, an extraordinary attractiveness that goes beyond what any objective assessment would support. They are carrying your projection. The light you see around them is partly your own light, reflected back. This is not a diminishment of the experience. The projection is real, the feeling is real, and the person onto whom it is cast often genuinely possesses some version of the quality being projected, but they are not the source of the quality you are responding to. They are the occasion for your encounter with it, and the encounter, however it is experienced, is ultimately an encounter with something in yourself that has not yet been met directly. The qualities that draw you most powerfully in another person, the ones that feel most significant, most compelling, most like something you cannot afford to lose, are pointing at something in your own psychological makeup that is present but unacknowledged, something that is yours, that belongs to your own potential, that is waiting to be claimed directly rather than encountered only in projection. This is the genuine invitation of intense attraction, not the invitation to possess the other person, but the invitation to meet, through the encounter with them, the specific aspect of yourself that their presence is making visible. 5. Strong attraction does not mean this is right for you. We arrive at the most practical, important, and most consistently uncomfortable principle of everything we have been exploring, the one that most directly contradicts the story that contemporary culture tells about attraction and its relationship to compatibility. Story the culture tells is essentially this: strong attraction is the signal. The intensity of the pull towards someone is the primary evidence that they are significant, that the connection is real, that this is something worth pursuing. Chemistry is the indicator of compatibility. The heart knows what the head does not. Follow the feeling. This story is not entirely wrong. Genuine chemistry is a real phenomenon, and the complete absence of it in a relationship is genuinely limiting. But it is importantly incomplete in a way that produces, for many people, the experience of following the strongest feelings and arriving, repeatedly, at the same disappointing destinations, because the strongest feelings are not always the most trustworthy guides to what is genuinely good for you. They are, as everything we have explored today suggests, significantly determined by factors that have nothing to do with the actual compatibility of the two people involved, by unconscious archetypal patterns, by the emotional templates of early experience, by projection, the attribution to another person of qualities that originate in your own unacknowledged interior. The intensity of the pull is real, but what it is pulling you toward is not always what it appears to be pulling you toward. Sometimes it is pulling you toward the repetition of a familiar dynamic, the emotional signature of an early environment that the nervous system recognizes as home. Sometimes it is pulling you toward the externalization of something that needs to be integrated internally, the encounter, in the form of another person, with a quality of your own self that has not yet been acknowledged. Sometimes it is pulling you toward the completion of unfinished emotional business from the past, the attempt to resolve, in a new relationship, what could not be resolved in the original one. None of these pulls are meaningless. All of them are pointing toward something real, toward a genuine aspect of your own psychological situation that deserves attention, but they are pointing at internal work, not at the specific person who triggered them. The person is the occasion, the pull is the invitation, and the invitation is to understand yourself more honestly, not to follow the feeling without examination. The question that Jung's framework makes available, the question that transforms the experience of attraction from a thing that simply happens to you into a source of genuine self-knowledge, is not why am I drawn to this person. It is what does this person bring out in me? What quality in myself does their presence activate? What unfinished business? What unacknowledged need? What aspect of my own potential that has not yet been claimed does this encounter point toward? That question does not tell you to dismiss the attraction. It does not tell you that the feeling is wrong or that the person is not genuinely interesting. It tells you to look more carefully at what you are actually encountering in them and in yourself before the intensity of the feeling has determined the direction of your choices. We have explored today 5 of the most significant principles available for understanding the psychology of attraction, why certain people draw you in ways you cannot explain, and what that drawing might actually be telling you, from the recognition that the unconscious is the primary driver of relational attraction, that the pull precedes and significantly determines the reasoning that follows it, through the understanding of archetypes, the universal patterns that certain people embody, producing the specific experience of inexplicable familiarity, through the examination of how the past determines the present, how the emotional learning of early experience shapes what feels like love and what feels like home in adult relationships, through the concept of projection, the discovery that what you most admire in another person often carries something of what you have not yet acknowledged in yourself, and finally, into the most challenging and most important recognition that the intensity of attraction is not a reliable guide to genuine compatibility, and that the more useful question is not why you feel the pull but what the pull is pointing toward. The attraction you feel toward certain people is not random. It is not merely the product of physical chemistry or shared interests. It is, in significant part, the expression of your own inner world, your unresolved dynamics, your unacknowledged qualities, your unfinished emotional business meeting the specific person who happens to provide the most compelling surface for those projections to land on. This understanding does not diminish attraction. It contextualizes it. It transforms it from a thing that happens to you into a source of information about yourself, from a force that simply carries you in a direction into an invitation to understand more honestly what the direction is pointing toward. The most important question is not why you love who you love. It is what loving who you love reveals about who you are and who you are still becoming. Attraction is not just a pull toward another person. It is a signal from your own depths. Listen to what it is actually saying.